the globe observes World Tuberculosis Day, the National Department of Health says it remains a challenge to get patients to continue taking their daily tuberculosis medication. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has sent a message of condolences to the people of Russia. Now, this is following a terrorist attack that saw at least 133 people killed near Moscow. A very good afternoon. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thank you very much for tuning in. You're watching The Week Ahead. You can interact with us on social media platforms. It's at Week Ahead, and our hashtag is The Week Ahead. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabala. Now, leading our bulletin, NGOs say that the fight to end tuberculosis needs collaboration between government and civil society. The Gauteng World Tuberculosis Day is being observed in the West Rand, in Senegal at Everton, where civil organizations and health department projects have set up to screen and spread awareness. SABC News reporter Hasina Gore has more. All right, let's shift our focus to this main story that we've been tracking for the day. ATM leader Vuyelwa Zungula is on the podium and ready to address supporters of the party as well as the nation and take them through their manifesto. Let's listen in.
Let me greet the Council of Elders of the ATM. Greet the royal leadership, ikumkani nenkosi ezikhoyo namhlanje. Greet all of the spiritual and faith leadership ezikhoyo. A special greetings to the parties that are here in support of this rally in Johannesburg. I want to greet again all of the structures of the ATM. Nani South Africans nibukele ku Facebook, ku YouTube, nazo zonke platforms ndiyanibulisa. But most importantly, I want to greet the most important people, the servants of the peace movement. Servants. We need to build a capable state in our country. Because if you look at South Africa, the state is failing in our country. That is why you find you have ogogo bethu having to sleep outside post offices because they want grants. It is because of the failure of the state. If you look at all of the things that are going wrong in our country, they paint to one clear picture. The state is failing to govern. That is why, as our priority as the ATM, it is to build a capable state. What does a capable state look like for us as the ATM? Number one is that the state must play a critical role in creating a good quality of life for the citizens. We don't agree with this thing in South Africa, whereby the functions of the state are being privatized. East South Africa can never belong to the private sector. The private sector can never be given a responsibility of creating a good quality of life. It is the state that must play that role of creating a good quality of life. Furthermore, there must be a timeless and dependable grant system. We can't have grants esizosifumana namhlanje ngomso zingafumaneki. And grants must zinyuke to reflect the needs of our people. There must be investment in road and rail infrastructure so that we are able to move around as a people and the goods in our country are able to be moved around. But critically, we must make sure ukuba SOEs, the state-owned enterprises, are supported to make sure that they succeed. There's this thing tetwa in our country whereby people are made to believe ukuba the SOEs are failing. There's SOEs that are serving the white minority. Your land bank, your PIC, those SOEs are functioning well. No one is saying those SOEs must be privatized. However, the SOEs that are serving the majority of our people, such as ESCOM or Post Office, who are made to believe ukuba they are dysfunctional, therefore they must be privatized. there is a clear program of ensuring that these SOEs that are serving the masses of our people are made to be destroyed. And we don't agree with that as the ATM. We believe there is enough capacity and there is enough resources for all of these SOEs to be in the hands of the state so that the state is able to play a critical role in serving the people. We are equally saying as the ATM, there needs to be quality healthcare for everyone. There can't be a case whereby if you are rich, you are wealthy, you are going to get exceptional healthcare. But if you are poor, you are not going to get quality healthcare. We are equally saying, makukashwe all of the environmental health practitioners. We've got a problem of fake foods that are killing our children. People in our country are being poisoned deliberately by these fake foods. And the people in our country need to know there are environmental health practitioners that are qualified to ensure that whatever that is being eaten and sold to our people, it is of good quality. That is why you are saying, let the government employ all environmental health practitioners so that there is no establishment, whether it is a big retailer or it is a spaza shop, there must be no establishment that will sell fake, expired or rejected foods to our people. We are equally saying traditional healers, nezangoma, must be given a space to operate and practice kwindawo zabo ezihlonitshiweyo, such as the rivers and the mountains. We need to fight for traditional healers nezangoma because they are authentic Africans. It cannot be that isangoma, when sifunu practice, they need to go to a Western institution to ask for permission. That is why we are saying that the current interim council under the Act 22 of 2007 must be appointed permanently, so that izangoma must be guided zezinye izangoma. Traditional healers must be regulated zezinye traditional healers. Also, we are saying that the royal and faith leaders must be given a responsibility and a meaningful role to contribute towards the shaping of the moral character of our country. Currently, we need to know if we are going to have a country that lacks respect for the elders, lacks discipline, that is not who we are as Africans. That is why we need amakhosi, we need abantu benkolo, bakhe kwakhiwe umntu. Because ukuba akwakhiwa abantu eSouth Africa sizoba nezilwanyana. Izilwanyana zezo uzibona eSouth Africa ube nentwana ena 18 years ibone ogogo abadala ba ingabadlwengula. It is because kugcwele izilwanyana. Kufuneka kubuyiswe ubuntu ebantwini. Kuba umntu ngumntu ngabantu. We need to regulate the digital industry, such as Uber and the Bolt, because when these companies coming from these European countries or America, when they come to South Africa, they undermine our people, they undermine our national interest. However, when they operate in Europe, they respect them. Bolt and Uber, when it is operating in Europe, it recognizes the drivers as employees. And when a driver is in an accident, Uber is there to assist the driver. But in our country, we've got our brothers and sisters that are driving Ubers and Bolts. Whenever there's an accident, Bolt can get in down, Uber can get in down. And we also have a problem with these institutions that are going to come in our country, violate our immigration and labor laws by employing or allowing abantu who are not providing a scarce and critical skills to drive Uber or Bolt. Surely, servants, South Africa has got the highest unemployment rate. Therefore, it cannot be acceptable that a person will come from outside of South Africa azoqhuba i-Uber apha. We've got so many young people that should be occupying that space instead of that space being taken by people coming outside of the country. We also say there needs to be a regulation of the film and television industry so that we do not allow what is happening now, whereby our brothers in that sector are being exploited. And when they are exploited, they've got no one to run to because there's no regulation. The producers in that sector are having so much power. That is why they are easily exploiting our people. We are also equally saying there needs to be educational content on our TV screens. We can't watch TV, go 8 ebusuku. More often than not, we are going to see crime, we are going to see drugs, we are going to see sex, we are going to see zonke ezizinto. What happened to those shows that were educating our people? Back in the day, there was also City that were educating people about a problem at the time, which was HIV and AIDS. Currently, we've got a problem of teenage pregnancies, of alcohol and drug abuse, mental health, but our content on TV is not playing its part by educating our people on those problems. As the ATM, we want to be very clear. Ukuba, we will govern this country. What do we mean by governing this country? It is because the ANC is in government, but it is not governing. The ANC iphethwe. That is why you find ukuba they do not have any solutions to the problems we face in our country. That is why you find that the private sector ngesixhosa iyasidalela yenza unothanda. But under the ATM government, the private sector will be under the control and the governance of the ATM. Under the ATM government, we are going to make sure that we are going to hold these banks accountable for rand manipulation. We can't allow our banking sector to go unregulated and operate with impunity. You have a banking sector whereby ukuba umnyama, you are going to be charged higher interest rates, but if umhlophe, you are going to be charged lower interest rates. We can't allow a private sector or the banking sector to manipulate the rand and in effect make sure that our people live in perpetual slavery of debt. That is why as the ATM, we are going to ensure ukuba those banks must be held accountable. On the question of the economy, we need to be very clear, servants. We've got a problem of poverty, unemployment, and inequality in our country. Therefore, our solutions are tailored to address those critical problems. That is why as the ATM, our priority is to ensure that there is a mass economic participation of our citizens. We can't live in a country with high such levels of unemployment and poverty. That is why we are saying that the economy must be transformed, because the economy, even during the times of apartheid, it was designed for a selected few people. That is why even today, the economy, it is benefiting very few individuals. We've got few families in our country that are dominating all economic activities. When you wake up in the morning, by the time you brush your teeth, you have already made money for the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers. When you go to work, you've already made the money. By the time you have lunch, you've already made the money. We're saying as the ATM, we need to transform the economy so that the economy of our country is not in the hands of a few families, but it must be in the hands of South Africans. And the way to do that is that we are going to dismantle the oligopolies and monopolies in our country so that we've got diverse players in the economy. For umtongaziyo, look at all of the sectors in our country. In the banking industry, there is between 5 and 10 banks that are dominating. Go to the financial services industry, it is the same thing. Go to the telecommunications industry, it is the same thing. Virtually all industries in our country are under the control of companies that are less than 10. That is why, Tina, as the ATM, we are saying to change all of that, 50% of government spending must go to SMMEs. Because currently the state is spending more than 80% of its budget on big business. That is why xa ungena e-airport, uzoba ngathi ungena e-Bidvest, yonke into e-airport yenziwa i-Bidvest. Now, we are not a country e-Bidvest, ne-shareholders e-Bidvest. That is why we are opposing this dominance of the economy by these few companies. We're also saying as a party that there needs to be local processing of our minerals. It cannot be that we live in a country whereby there is so much gold, there's so much diamonds, there's so much mineral wealth in our country, but asikwazi ukuziprocessa. We've got so many young people with skills, but they are not skilled to process our minerals. Our minerals are taken as raw as they are to all of these European countries, and they are sold back to us at very high prices. We're saying as the ATM, the mineral wealth of our country belongs to us as South Africans. When you go to Dubai, when you go to the Middle East, they've got oil. Who does that oil benefit? Abantu balamazwe. But how is it that in our country, when you go to Mpumalanga, you find poverty, disease, and sickness? You don't see ukuba abantu basempumalanga are benefiting from the mineral wealth of coal in that province. We must not accept that we are going to be poor, we are going to be sick as a result of these minerals. However, Americans and Europeans are going to be rich and wealthy, whereas Tina, we are going to be poor and sick by these minerals. We are saying again, ukuba the government contracts under 10 million must be set aside for SMMEs. We can't allow big businesses to dominate the government spending. That is why you are clear to say, under the ATM government, there is going to be a law that is setting aside all of the government contracts under 10 million to be set aside for SMMEs. We are going to again advocate that the PIC invests in production or manufacturing-driven initiatives. Because currently, EPIC is spending a lot of money investing in consumering-driven initiatives. That is why abantu are going to see a mall being built, but celebrate. Whereas, Tina, we want the PIC to fund the opening of factories. Because we believe, ukuba, we need a country whereby we consume what we produce. That is why under the ATM government, we are going to open and build factories all across the districts in our country, so that whatever is consumed in those different districts is produced in those districts. We are going to ensure, ukuba, there is a local production of basic goods in our country. We can't be importing soap, import amakhandlela, import toothpicks, to an extent whereby everything we eat, everything that we wear, everything that is made in other countries. As the ATM government, East South Africa is not going to be made in China country. Under the ATM government, most products in South Africa will be made in South Africa. That is how you create jobs. You build factories, you manufacture in that country. That is how you create jobs. We are going to ensure, ukuba, iSouth Africa iyeke uku-importa izinto that it is able to produce. iSouth Africa is importing umbrella, it is importing sneakers, it is importing a lot of things that we've got the capabilities to produce. Again, we are saying that the township economy needs to be transformed so that it becomes a distribution channel for all of these locally produced goods. And we are going to restore the township and village economy, because it is an anomaly, servants, that you go to the township economy. More than 90% of all businesses in those townships are not operated by South Africans. That is something that is an anomaly, because we want a state in our country whereby South Africans are able to enjoy the economy. They can never be able to enjoy the economy ukuba they are not active participants in the economy. And we're also saying that companies must only employ non-South Africans for scarce and critical skills, because these companies are greedy, because they take people outside of the country because they want to pay them slave wages. And by doing so, they create tensions and conflict, because they offload South Africans in order to employ non-South Africans. We're saying, Tina, as the ATM, we're going to empower the labor inspectors so that the labor inspectors are able to go to each and every of these companies to make sure that there is no company that is violating immigration and labor laws. And these companies that are violating these laws, they are going to be fined heavily, and we are going to revoke their licenses. We've got a company here called Ihuawei. It was given a contract in our country. When this company was operating, it was found ukuba 100% of the staff in that company is not South African. Linyala elo that you can go to a company and find no South African. That is why we are saying, Tina, kakeni voteli ATM, ipati eyaziyo ipower of holding the private sector accountable. On the question of load shedding, people...
All right, those are live visuals from the Jabulani Amphitheatre in Soweto, where ATM leader Vuyolethu Zungula is currently taking party supporters and the broader electorate through their manifesto. Among others, he has spoken about the need for greater regulation of the banking sector, of course, drawing from the recent allegations of racial profiling when it comes to granting of credit. He also touched on the all-important conversation of beneficiation or value-added processing, which many would know involves the transformation of raw minerals to finished products. It's a big conversation in the country. Many political parties have touched on it. Well, our reporter Kenima Panga, who has been covering the rally, will give us a more comprehensive wrap. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, NGOs say that the fight to end tuberculosis needs collaboration between government and civil society. In Gauteng, World Tuberculosis Day is being observed in the West Rand in Sedibeng at Everton, where civil organizations and health department projects have set up to screen and spread awareness. SABC News reporter Hasina Gori has more.
Tuberculosis has been identified as the second deadliest virus globally, claiming the lives of 1.3 million people since 2002. The numbers are shared in Africa, holding a large portion, and South Africa is in the top 20 global hotspot countries. Today is World Tuberculosis Day, and we're here in the West Rand in Sedibeng in Everton, which has been identified as one of the areas in Gauteng with a high number of tuberculosis. Yesterday we spent the day at a symposium in the build-up to today, looking at some of the challenges that this disease faces, but also some of the wins that government has been making in strides to win the fight against tuberculosis. While tuberculosis is a curable disease, one of the huge concerns is that many people do not identify, do not test, but also do not adhere to the regimen programs. I want to bring in one of the doctors that are here as part of the SABC Development Partners. Dr. Ashley, thank you for speaking to us. Can you just talk us through your process and what your contribution is here today in the regimens around the treatment of tuberculosis?
Hi, so as mentioned, I'm from SABC Development Partners, and we're funded by the Global Fund in order to assist in supporting and treating and finding the missing TB cases. So we're here today, just a small part of our company is here to screen our patients. Once they've been screened, they go through to our X-ray machine where they will have an X-ray done by a radiographer, which is actually interpreted by artificial technology. That gives a report and a score, and that is indicative of how if the patient has TB or the likelihood of having TB or not having TB. We're also here collecting sputums for gene expert testing, of which they'll be referred and appropriately started. And of course, health education. That's the main reason why we're here, to create awareness about TB so people know the symptoms, that people are aware of the symptoms, and to know that this is a curable disease.
How important is that, that we have that education around tuberculosis, but also the testing of it in our treatment as a whole?
So if we look at the numbers of people that are affected by TB, it's one of the main causes of death in our country. It's approximately like 468 per 100,000. So we know that that is very significant. And 60% of those patients are actually suffering from HIV as well. So it's so important to get out into the community and make them aware of the symptoms and aware of the testing opportunities that are available. And most of these are free, as well as the treatments. So it's very, very important for us to get down to the community level and create this awareness around TB, which is so great that we're all here today. Actually.
And you mentioned technology, and I want to talk into that. How important is leaning into these artificial intelligence, to all these new developments in treating not just tuberculosis, but also HIV as well?
Well, as you know, we're approaching the fourth industrial revolution. There's these new dynamic testing systems and treatment systems that are available. And in order for us to actually stand and fight this disease together, we are going to have to lean into those. We're going to have to embrace them fully and take on this technology in order to help us diagnose and treat. And it's helping us to be more effective, more efficient, and overall, actually getting to those TB cases. So it's very important for us as a country to lean into these technologies and embrace them so they can make us stronger against the fight against TB.
And yesterday we spoke with the Department of Health, and they were celebrating one of their wins, which was a shorter regimen of treating TB, but also curing some of these cases. But what is the reality? You working in community levels. What is the reality of the lived experience of those people?
So, SABC, we work mainly at a community level as well as in the facilities. And we've made great wins, as the department is correct. We've got a BPAL regimen that is now 6 months, which treats TB, as well as a 3HP regimen, which is for TB prophylaxis. So great wins have been made. But our people are still struggling, especially our communities at the ground level. People are struggling with resources, with transport, and of course our vulnerable homeless communities and drug-using communities. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but we're making strides in going in the right direction. So events like this, where NGOs are partnering with departments of health, are so important, because I don't think any one of those two divisions by themselves can actually make a proper impact. But when we're standing together and offering services together, that's when we're going to make our great strides. But yes, we are making good strides, but there's always room for improvement.
Before I let you go, I just want to go to the last part, bringing on what you've just said. What more can be done? What should we be working towards and looking towards when it comes to the fight against tuberculosis?
So what we need to do as a country is we need to stand together and work against breaking down the stigma against TB. There's still a great stigma that exists with TB and HIV. So that becomes, we'll only overcome that through health education, creating health awareness, and embracing that this is a curable disease. That this can be cured, so there's no reason to be afraid to go and get tested. There's no reason to be afraid to say to your colleagues and to your families, I'm having these symptoms, I need to go get tested. Or I've been diagnosed. As a contact, can you also go and get diagnosed? We need to work together as a country to break down the stigma, to increase testing so we can diagnose and treat overall.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashley. Speaking to us here at the World Tuberculosis Day celebration happening in Senegal in the West Rand today, speaking to us on the diagnostic that they're doing. They're doing free testing using AI, which is the new technology, artificial intelligence, to identify and read those reports that come through from the X-rays that take place. One of the key components of the treatment and prevention of tuberculosis is early prevention and testing by people, breaking down of the stigmas. Speaking the need for communities, NGOs to work together with government and the Department of Health, all coming together to work for one specific goal. We're here today, as I said, in the West Rand, at the celebration of the World Tuberculosis Day, which is not done here in South Africa alone, but also globally. And what we will expect to happen throughout the day is hear from the Department of Health. The Minister is expected to address us, as well as various different counterparts of his at the provincial level, as well as other NGOs and interested stakeholders. It is going to be a full day looking at tuberculosis, looking at its prevention, looking at the challenges, but also the wins that South Africa has made in this fight against tuberculosis.
All right, we shift our focus to this story now. The National Prosecuting Authority is fighting to have the analysis of documents and electronic devices obtained through the 9 search and seizures in the 320 million Durban solid waste fraud and corruption case against eThekwini municipality officials admitted as evidence in the trial. Former eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede and 21 others face several charges, including conspiracy to commit corruption, fraud, money laundering, as well as racketeering. We're joined now by legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala of Zikalala Attorneys. Mpumelelo, good afternoon and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon to you, and also good afternoon to your viewers.
No, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. So the main trial in the Durban High Court has taken a back seat. They're now dealing with the admissibility of evidence obtained through search and seizures through a trial within a trial. Now, the main contention is the validity of the search and seizures or search warrants. What does Section 21C of the Criminal Procedure Act tell us?
It basically says any document that you're going to admit as evidence, it must be obtained in the proper manner in line with what the Constitution and also the Criminal Procedure Act will then be able to say. The strict procedure will be to say if you want a search warrant and you know that something is happening, it's not a search warrant in which if not obtained today, then things are not going to go okay. You must go to the magistrate court or any presiding officer, explain the circumstances and the sequence of events and also the facts of the matter. If it warrants so that a such warrant is issued because that is basically an infringement or a justified infringement of your rights, then the search warrant is going to be granted. Once you have received a search warrant, you then go and collect all those documentation. But you must make sure that the link between the collection of the document, whoever's going to touch them, is not broken. So you must know at any given time who's going to touch the document, why they were touching the document, and the results of that. Because if the chain is broken, then the admissibility of the evidence might be at stake. But most importantly, the credibility or the weight which is going to be attached to that evidence is also going to be at stake. Hence why we have a trial within a trial today.
I want to take you to the role of the magistrate in all of this with the granting of the search and seizures. Advocate Jurgensen, who was representing 2 of the accused, maintains that the magistrate failed to apply his or her mind and failed to satisfy himself that the affidavit contained sufficient information for the granting of that search and seizure. Your views on just the role of the magistrate in all of this?
The magistrate, that role is super important because it makes or breaks whatever the results which are going to be at a later stage. Remember, if the court finds that the magistrate failed to apply their mind in this particular matter, it means that that block of evidence cannot be admitted, thus destroying or maybe limiting the chances of the state ever being successful in this matter. So it's important that when a magistrate is faced with this type of application, it is not a tick box exercise type of application. It's an application in which you then say, let me conduct and investigate these documents as if we are now conducting a trial. Is there prima facie evidence which is able to link this person to this particular crime? What other evidence is there? Let me reject it if I can see that there's nothing which links these individuals. Let me also prescribe and highlight to them the manner in which this evidence must be obtained, the manner in which this evidence must then be protected, and also alert them that any failure to adhere to any of the things in which of the instructions that I'm going to issue will render the collection of the documents and the utilization of the documents basically useless at the end of the day. So it's important that as magistrates, you sit down and you make sure that everything complies, but most importantly, there's a causal link between the search warrant which is required and the alleged act in which it is stated that you have committed and you are indeed the individual. That's where they should go and search and seize all the documentation or evidential material that they might need.
So meaning the affidavit must be quite comprehensive. It's as though you are now presenting to the magistrate as if whatever is the evidence you'll present to a court.
Definitely. I always call it a mini trial in inverted commas because that's where you make your break the existence or the gravity of your case. So show this magistrate to say, if I do not get this crucial information that I so believe is embedded in that particular office, in that particular house, these are the repercussions which are going to be. This is the nature of the evidence that is required. This is how it helps us to prove the elements that are there. These are the other witnesses that have also come about. We've interrogated them properly. These are the supporting or confirmatory affidavits, so that when you go to that magistrate who is going to conduct the mini trial in inverted commas, is going to be solely convinced that if I do not grant this search and seizure procedure, then it means that I'm going to deputize the state's case. But if it means that there's nothing there, then reject it, as to show the state that you have applied your mind, and in the application of your mind, it wasn't just a tick box exercise, it was a process that was applied to, thought about, and the relevant conclusion was reached.
Mm-hmm. Now, on the decision to go the search and seizure route, I was listening to one of the Hawks members that took the stand. He said that they needed the documents from the service providers to compare them with the evidence that they'd already seized at the municipality to draw that link. Now, would that be enough? He went on to state that the reason they went that route is because they feared that the accused, if asked, would not surrender the documents but possibly destroy them. Is that enough to then not even attempt to ask and just go the search and seizure operation route?
No, not precisely, because you have to dig deeper and then say, is it evidence that can be obtained or that is sitting with a third party, and that particular third party can't be easily influenced? If there are bank transactions, for example, you and I can transact, but the main or the source of the information is going to come from the bank. So there's no need to go then to either of the parties if you can go to the individual that is holding the authentic or the blueprint of what you are looking for, rather than going the other way around. And unfortunately, it will depend on the nature of events and also the sequence or the facts that do exist. But for me, it does not really state a convincing ground if your only fear with those documents is that the documents are going to be destroyed. You must then come back and say, this is where we are with the investigation. Our investigations have received that there's a causal link between person A and person B. There are many transactions that have taken place. Those transactions are not authentic. We want to make sure and be able to investigate how those things are. And the only manner in which you can be able to do so if we go and seize the documents so that we're able to analyze them. The individual who's going to analyze the documents have got the following qualification, and this is how we're going to preserve the information and evidence to be later utilized in court. And all the individuals that are involved here are later going to be available so that they can be cross-examined if needs be.
Mm-hmm. Now, the state in their broader case alleges that Gumede and her co-accused actively associated themselves with the common purpose of manipulating the procurement process. What would this mean if the evidence which would link the service providers to the municipal officials does not get admitted? Does it mean the whole case now is thrown out?
Not necessarily. It depends on the weight that was going to be afforded to that causal link. Well, it was going to bolster the state's case to say, here's the common purpose that we're talking about, because the difficulty that the state has now is linking the politicians to the administrative side of things. Remember, politicians like Umam Gumede do not sit in procurement tables, so they don't even know when those committees are going to sit. They do not describe or write the criteria in order for one to qualify for a tender. They do not award tenders at the same time. So you must find it and make it and try and show the court and say, this is how this individual links to it, even though they did not sit or did not sign even a single document. This is how they've benefited. And the beneficiation of money only cannot be if there might be a principal reasons of why money is exchanging hands from one place to another. And if there's none, then it makes your case super hard to prove, because it only insinuation and assumptions that you can say these individuals are involved. So for administrative purposes or the administration, maybe it might be easier. But when you want to involve politicians, then that's where the difficulty comes in.
So meaning the trial within a trial is quite critical here, because if you're talking about the link from politicians to administrators and then from administrators to service providers, if none of the evidence that was seized now can be used, then it means, like you say, it becomes you drawing inferences or speculations that we believe that all of these individuals were linked.
And if you can't support those inferences with independent acts that can, or the source of those independent acts has been sourced from independent parties or third parties, then it makes it even more difficult for you to say these individuals were acting in consent, these individuals were acting under common purpose, they knew exactly what was happening. And it's not by mere coincidence that money exchanged hands or that they were able to communicate. So it's absolutely crucial for the state to be able to prove that these transactions actually took place. And the only way they can do so is to say, this is the manner in which we've collected this investigation, and this is where we are today.
Mpumelelo, as always, thank you very much for your time. That's Mpumelelo Zikalala of Zikalala Attorneys. More news on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, Senegal heads to the polls today to vote for its fifth president in a delayed election following a period of uncertainty after outgoing President Macky Sall's unsuccessful effort to delay the election. The last-minute withdrawal of two contenders has resulted in 17 approved candidates in what is expected to be the most tightly contested race since the country gained independence more than 6 decades ago. Over 7 million voters are registered in the West African nation. For more on this, we're joined now by SABC News International Editor Sophie Mkwena with the very latest. Good afternoon, Sophie. So outgoing President Sall's second term was marked by violent unrest over the prosecution of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, and concerns, of course, that Sall wanted to extend his mandate past the constitutional limit. However, we saw the Constitutional Council overrule his decision. How important was the stepping in of the courts in a country that is traditionally known as one of the most stable democracies in the coup-prone West African region?
I think that did help because he finally agreed to that ruling that he cannot extend his stay in office. And he did implement the recommendations. He went further to pardon opposition members who were arrested. And therefore, that is why Ousmane Sonko was released from prison just 10 days before the elections. And therefore, he couldn't contest. And he took a decision to support another opposition candidate, Faye. And therefore, there's hope that his numbers and Faye's numbers might come handy in terms of making a chunk of voter turnout. And also, that is good for democracy because people can then exercise their will freely. And those who are supporting Ousmane Sonko, they know that he has endorsed the other candidates. But also, you would recall when I spoke to the former South African President Thabo Mbeki 2 weeks ago, he pointed out that he did speak to President Macky Sall as a person that he is a friend to, persuading him not to tarnish the image and the credibility and the standing of Senegal on the continent and around the world in relation to a country that has never experienced a removal of government by military, and therefore saying that it is a shining example in the midst of all those challenges in West Africa. So he must protect that. He later had a message that the President, Macky Sall, did agree to do that, and those announcements, and later him even announcing election date, and his last day in office being April, and him saying that whatever happens, he is leaving office in April. So now the test is today. Whatever he said, implementation thereof, but also the security to ensure that there's relative peace during voting. We mustn't see those violent scenes that we saw build up to this election. And also during counting to ensure that all parties are able to monitor and ensure that when the Electoral Commission is making an announcement, there's an acceptance of the results, and finally the inauguration of whoever is going to be the president and Macky Sall leaving office in April. So it's still very, very, let's say, difficult moment, because you can only guarantee transition, smooth transition, when all parties have accepted the results and a new president has taken office.
I wanted to touch on some of the candidates, particularly Macky Sall's preferred candidate, who doesn't seem to enjoy a lot of popularity quite now, Amado. But before that, I want to talk about Senegal's population, which mostly comprises of young people under 35. What are some of the challenges faced by the youth, and what exactly are they hoping to see or want a leader to address?
You know, Nomfundo, I've been preaching this gospel for a long time now, since I became the editor, looking at Africa and global issues, particularly the continent, because that's where my focus is. And having covered elections, coordinating coverage of elections, and the AU, it is clear Africa has got the youngest population. All countries are grappling with young people who are unemployed. It's a ticking bomb. All the coups you see in West Africa is as a result of young people who are restless. And now you have young generals in the military who are saying it can't be business as usual. We can't continue to be colonized, and the wealth of our countries doesn't change our lives as young people. It can't be like it was with our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. And therefore, Senegal is experiencing a similar situation of restless youth. That is why they are rallying behind Ousmane Sonko. And the same in South Africa as we go to this election. Anyone who is not speaking to the youth in this country who are unemployed, some of them well-educated, but, languishing in poverty, you will never get an endorsement, and majority being black and African. And therefore, this is a problem on the continent, and it's all about unemployment, which leads to poverty, poor economy, which leads to unemployment and poverty. So these three issues, you have to address those three issues.
So meaning Ousmane Sonko is the one that mostly resonates with the young people. And then what of the former Prime Minister Amadou Ba? Because, like I stated a bit earlier, that this is the one that is endorsed by the current President Macky Sall.
Clearly, if he comes in, he is going to continue with the status quo. And I can't see Senegal being stable unless, if he comes in, it's not business as usual. Because the tendency is that continuity, and that's what politicians like. For example, in South Africa, people are saying, no, ANC, continuity and all of that. Whoever comes in, if you come with mentality of continuity, business as usual, you are not going to make a dent. And come next election, you are going to be fighting a tough election. ANC is fighting a tough election today because of what happened 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And the current person now is on his back foot trying to undo the damage, trying to convince the voters. So with this candidate as well, he will have to deal with the legacy of the predecessor. And therefore, it will be a difficult one. But we don't know what will be the result. But when you look at the trend, I looked at Kenya, I looked at Zambia, I looked at Lesotho, the youth vote turned the situation around. But unfortunately, when those people have gotten this vote of the youth, they don't make any impact in terms of issues that the youth have been complaining about. And that's the sad reality.
Sophie, as usual, thank you very much for your reportage. That's international news editor Sophie Mukwena speaking to us. To this story now, Russia has arrested several people, including 4 suspected gunmen, after a shooting rampage that saw over 100 people killed and dozens injured at a concert hall near Moscow. Militant Islamist group Islamic State have claimed responsibility for Friday night's attack, the deadliest in Russia for 20 years. President Vladimir Putin says all those responsible for the terror attack will be punished.
It's been described as the deadliest attack in Russia in 20 years. A group of gunmen opened fire on concert-goers with automatic weapons. Authorities say the number of victims is expected to rise. This is what unfolded when the heinous attack occurred at Crocus City Hall in northwestern Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared March 24 as a day of mourning. I'm addressing in regards to a bloody, barbaric terror attack that's killed dozens of peaceful people that were not guilty of anything. Our fellow citizens, including children, teenagers and women. Russia's foreign ministry has called the shooting a terrorist attack and called on the world to denounce it.
Well, first of all, in the case of Cuba, we always condemn any kind of terrorism. From the way they come, we always condemn. It could be in Russia, in any country, because terrorism is not a way to reach something like. In the case of Russia, especially, we have a very strong relation. Since the very beginning was our condemnation to that kind of acts, terrorist acts, because innocent people is the one who are suffering for that.
What transpired, it is indeed, we are all sorry for that. All these terrorist attacks are something that we have to deplore, that we cannot really admit, So, that is what I can say, that it's a really very sad event, you can say. It's a very, very sad event, what has happened there. And we all will be behind those who suffer from such type of actions.
South African ally of Russia has also condemned the attack and sent condolences to the families of the victims and wished those injured a speedy recovery.
The South African embassy staff in Moscow, including locally recruited personnel, are all accounted for. We've also made contact with all South African students that we know of who are based in Moscow, and they are all safe. The South African government condemns this and all other acts of terror. We believe that terrorism in any shape or form and for whatever reason does not belong in our society and should be condemned by all.
China has sent condolences to the Kremlin. Beijing says it opposes all forms of terrorism and strongly condemns terrorist attacks. African Union Commission boss Musa Faki Mohammed says he was shocked by the horrific news. He also sent a message of condolences for the bereaved families and affirmed the AU's solidarity with Russia at this critical time. Kyle Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
And that's where we leave it for today. We're back again next weekend. Take care.